What's going on, creators? Yeah, just want to get on here and bring everybody back to now. Appreciate you all being here and vibing with me for a bit. Yeah, today I'd like to talk a little bit about reframing shit tests and how to go about doing that so that you're not constantly being disrespected, having your boundaries challenged constantly, and having a little bit more self-respect, which then translates to less and less shit tests. And so, what a shit test is for those that are just like, well, that's a new term. I'm not familiar with that. If you're a man and you're married, you know exactly what that is. Women seem to do it a lot, where it's just like, oh, you have a boundary. Now I'm going to see how close I can get to it and then overstep it and then, trample on it and see what you do. Now I don't know why it is, but like a thing I've realized about creation is a lot of suffering has to do with wishing creation was what you have in your mind versus what it is, and having that disconnect, causes a lot of like turmoil. So kind of where my mindset is to see what's going on, not to agree with it, but to at least go, okay, water's wet. This is what it is. I got chickens. I got a kind of like a little farm. I got 3 turkeys and I don't even know how many chickens, like 10. Um, but you watch how they get along with each other and govern themselves, and it's like it's just what it is. And so when it comes to shit tests, they just it just is what it is. And so it's a boundary that's being pushed. But a big part of like the shit test is in how you're interpreting it and how you're defining it and how your assumptions and beliefs are playing in relationship to that test. A big thing that can start to happen, like in a marriage, for example, is women will shit test you, to see if you are a value, if you're like a high value guy, if you're, worthy of respect, if you're, whatever in their eyes, maybe like their father. It's hard to know exactly where they're coming from, because a lot of times it seems so random and chaotic, where it's just like, oh, things were good and now we're going out with your friends, and now I'm like listening to an hour of just man bashing from the group of you. It's like, in those situations though, it's important to for one, communicate that, hey, this is offensive to me. This is not something I like to be around. To just to be clear, with your identity. As part of the shit test, is it gives you an opportunity to define who you are in relationship to them. And a lot of times, the stuff that other people are bringing to us as far as the shit tests go, the disrespect, the maybe opening up like an old wound of like, oh, your parents didn't give you very much attention, so I'm going to withdraw my attention to punish you and get you to like manipulate you to bend to my will type thing. I don't know if, how much of that's involved, but definitely there's a flavor of that in there. But like this habitual, kind of patterns that can play out through others. A lot of times it's corresponding to something going on with our own kind of state of consciousness. So it's like the more you're able to kind of make that connection, the easier it is to not be so triggered by what's going on, because that's how you fail is to become triggered and reactive, and next thing you know, you're spinning out and spiraling, and and then you failed the test. So this is kind of like moving in a direction of, for one, passing them, and then for two, not being bothered, but reframing what's going on to move you in a more, I don't know, less attached kind of progression. Less what am I trying to say? Less attached to people pleasing. Trying to just constantly try to make everybody happy with you, having no boundaries whatsoever. Everything's fine. You can do whatever you want to me. I'm just a punching bag. People don't like that. And so when you get these shit tests, it's an opportunity. So part of like that is reframing it, especially if you're being like really reactive to it, or it's like, oh, you're talking to a woman. A lot of these shit tests I've experienced come from women. But like like I said, employees will do it. Friends will do it. It's just random people, customers will do it. A lot of people will will do this for some reason, and just I don't know if a lot of it's conscious, but it is what it is. I mean, people are doing these things. People online will do it. Yes, but the thing of it is, if it's a relationship that you care about versus somebody you can write off and be like, I don't need to be around you, you got nothing that I want from you, that's one thing. But that's another one, is family. So it's like, be clear about, okay, this is offensive, these are the reasons why. If you're going to continue to do this, then we're going to have an issue. And so in that, making a clear statement. And there's really ultimately one relationship going on, and that's your relationship between you and God. And so if you're accepting a lot of like disrespect and just like abusive behavior and just drama and manipulation and everything, you got to ask yourself, it's like, why is God um, how is this serving this awakening process? How is God using this to benefit me? Is it because, I'm constantly just allowing myself to be tormented by demonic kind of influences just because, I'm just trying to be so fucking accepting of everything, or so loving. I'm trying to be so loving that I'm just accepting all sorts of fucking just awful behavior, abusive behavior. You have to go within yourself to kind of figure that out. You already kind of know, but once that comes to your awareness, well then then it's time to push the shit test to the next level, which would be, for one, saying exactly what's going on. It was like, this is not okay. This violates my sovereignty as a being. When you're trying to manipulate and put your will onto me. You've seen a lot of that with the COVID shit. It's like, oh, if you don't wear your mask, my mask doesn't work. It's like, what? It's like this kind of, you need to bend to my will. And it's like, well, you are really overstepping a boundary with me, which is, I'm not going to jump through hoops for you to pander to your delusions and fear. And that's just is what it is. And so as you kind of define that, you got to be willing on some level to, once you create this kind of boundary, when you hit the shit test, you have to be able to back up whatever you're going to say. And so one of the mistakes I've made, in the past, is like going from 0 to like 100. Where it's just like getting in a fight, like maybe with like a a spouse or friend or whatever, and it's just like, well then, what, fuck you. I don't need to have this relationship. Bye. That kind of vibe. And then once the anger passes, or the whatever passes, then it's like, oh, I actually didn't really mean that like that. And once I said it, then it kind of didn't feel true anymore. And then next thing you know, the boundary that you kind of put, but you put this gigantic, going nuclear consequence to what happens when you cross the boundary. Well, then you're not enforcing it. So you got to make sure whatever relationship it is, that has a boundary pusher, that has somebody that almost is coming off as like a parrot of like the Matrix, where they're just like pouting, spouting scripts at you, and just they're programming at you all the time and wanting you to be their robot that just validates their fucking weird delusions on things. You put the boundary up and say, hey, I don't like this train of delusion. So it's like, I don't agree with your fear. I don't choose to tolerate it. So either you're gonna stop bringing that to me, and then what's the consequence? Well, if you are married, the ultimate consequence is, well, we're just gonna get divorced, and fuck you, blah blah blah. But again, there's only this kind of one higher level relationship going on. It's like, if you start thinking of yourself as like being married with God instead of like married to some separate ego, it makes it easier to kind of start to look at things as being more connected. But like, and ask yourself, what would Jesus do in this situation? Would Jesus constantly just be abused by satanic shit, or would he tell that kind of consciousness to have respect his boundary? Many times in the Bible, Jesus told people that were demon possessed to quote unquote to shut up, stop talking. So it's like you got to look kind of at that example, where it's like, okay, well, Jesus didn't just tolerate evil and just like delusions and just awful behavior. When he was murdered, that was one thing. But you got to look at the whole puzzle of that life to kind of get some discernment. I ultimately ask God what to do. But one of the things that is effective, on some level, and isn't going full, nuclear of like, I'm done, this is over, blah blah blah. Because we're called to forgive, and husbands, are supposed to, love their wives the way Jesus loves the church. And so it's like Jesus isn't just throwing the church to the wind and saying, well, fuck you, you guys are fucking hopeless. It's just, that's not the direction either. But or I'm going to be violent with you, and I'm going to impose a bunch of fear onto you so that you bend to my will. That's kind of an example of the egoic consciousness. How to solve problems. I'm going to impose my will onto you through fear and threat of violence to get what I want. Well, we're not going to do that to pass a shit test, but what we can do is we can remove our attention completely from the problem. That problem is your spouse, that problem is your body, that problem is an employee, that is an employer, if that's, whatever happens, if it's the media, if you're feeling like you're constantly getting shit tested through the manifestations that are being drawn to you, consciously and unconsciously, well, the best thing you can start to do is to remove your attention after you've already made your statement clear to the other person. Or you can even say it, to the situation in life. If you know that, this is a fucked up situation, I'm tired of it happening, more than likely it's in correspondence to an unconscious belief and assumption that's limiting and untrue. It's something that you can start to unpack, but then start to respect yourself enough to go, enough is enough of this shit. I'm not going to just sit here and tolerate abuse and fucking satanic types of attitudes. Of like, oh, I'm going to tear that person down. I'm going to hurt the other person and bring them to my level. It's like, how dare you have hope? Let me show you what hope is. It's that kind of fucking demonic bullshit of tearing others down so that they're to this lower level, which has no bottom. That mindset is a constant spinning down the drain. So getting to a point where it's just like, I don't like this. This is bullshit. Ultimately, you're only saying that to your creator, that's expressing through all these different forms, and in that, you're also then building up a mindset of self-love, and positive things that will have a more positive reflection into the situations and circumstances of your life. And so once you remove your attention from the quote-unquote problem, start to focus more on just holding on to that boundary. Because if you habitually have let people walk all over you, going from 0 to 100, and this is again part of stewarding, you're going from 0 to 100, a big change like that, you're going to meet with the resistance that has taught the people around you to be either disrespectful, to walk all over you, to shit test you all the time, to constantly question your value, or whatever the motivation is. It's getting you out of that frame of mind, and ultimately look within yourself, because the way people are treating you is a direct reflection of something going on within your consciousness. Because consciously and unconsciously, we teach people around us how to treat us. and through boundaries and what we're tolerating. God set boundaries, what God appreciates. So God, God does it, you're doing it, you are connected, with your creator. So that a lot of things that are true of God are also true of you, because you are God's offspring according to the Bible. So it's like the boundaries that God sets. You know, why would you not have boundaries that you set? So it's like you have to start to kind of go within yourself and start to unpack why you're people pleasing, for example, or give a shit about what maybe negative. A lot of times with people, if you're doing something maybe on a higher level than they are, they'll see you and then they'll trigger their programming of like why they think that they can't reach different levels. So like for like music example, can be kind of toxic. If you are doing things on next level, like music, people that may be on like the amateur level or just like venturing up the ladder of that progression, they'll start to look at you like you ain't shit, and and they'll start talking shit, and they'll start trying to tear you down to get where they're at, instead of like realizing that, oh, that's a stepping stone that shows me what's possible. It's all about this mindset. So it's like the more that you're able to recognize, for one, when a shit test's happening, which you'll instantly be able to tell, because it strikes your inner being as like, what the fuck is, what? It's like you be like in your marriage or whatever, and things are fine, and the next thing you know, your wife says something really disrespectful or just cruel, or just like, what is wrong with you? It's like, why would you even think about saying something like that? Or like whatever it happens to be. And a lot of times, the more advanced and different levels of consciousness you become, the more that this correspondence will then trigger others, their fear programming, to be like, oh, it's like, say you make more money, for example. Well, then people will like look at where they're at to where you're at, which is really easy to tell through just like the numbers and like, but even like with wealth and shit, it's kind of hard to like, there's a difference between having cash, and just like having like properties and businesses and valuable things. It's just like, how much is, what's the value of this property? It's like, I don't know. It's like, you tell me. It's hard to like quantify some of these things, but a lot of it has to do, again, with your own mindset. And as you shift to higher states of consciousness, a lot of times you'll get shit tested by people, your old mindset being externalized through another person then too. So it's like, it's almost like it's just part of creation, as you get these shit tests that are trying to hold you down to the state of consciousness of like being like a people pleaser, or just being a coward, or just being disrespect. What's the opposite of like respect? Disrespect, is that the best word? Just being disrespected by the people that are supposed to love you the most, like your family. It's like that's craziness. And so it's like, as like the man, in a marriage, for example, you're supposed to be leading by example, and also just like kind of spiritually, making sure your family's like going down the right paths, on things. But like a big thing to start to do is, as you recognize the shit tests that are happening, that are being brought to you in the here and now, to go within, to see what is the mental, then what's the mental narrative going on when that happens. It's like, oh, these NPCs are just running amok again. Or, oh, the women, they can't get their heads together, or whatever you're telling yourself. That's for you to unpack, because a lot of those are just limiting beliefs and assumptions that are playing out as theater, as your relationships. And to start to change those, to start demonstrating who you are, which is love and not fear. It involves passing these tests, whether you like it or not. It's like you're already either doing it or you're not doing it. That's the problem. It's like when you get shit tested by a woman, for example, if you don't pass, well, then then they're like, you're never gonna have sex with them. You're never gonna have like a romantic relationship with them. It's just like you're just being this like friend zone type vibe where they just won't think of you as like a valuable man or whatever. It's like, a lot about, the male female dynamic seems to be at least about value on some level, respect, coming from like the man, like the position, I guess. But like the women, like, I don't know, it's hard to really put into words, but it's like the 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 more that you fail the shit test, the worse it gets. It's like the more disrespectful your wife will be, the more she won't value you, she won't appreciate you, and it just has to do with, oh, I don't see you as a very strong man because you keep failing these little tests. And I don't think women really know they're doing it as much as they do, like consciously, but it happens nonetheless, so it's important to catch those things when they happen, and to immediately just be like, okay, where did we become unclear on, I've already told you, when for example, maybe your wife calls you a name that you don't like, or just something that casually disrespectful like that, or it's like, I told you I don't like that, you're continuing to do it, so where we go from here, because I'm not going to sit here and tolerate it either. um, then remove your attention from that problem of the disrespect. Put it on, kind of start imagining how you would ideally like to be treated in instead, and with your boundary, you have to enforce it, or else people are going to walk all over you, and it is what it is. That's one of the hard truths and hard lessons I've had to learn as a man in this world. It's like people just don't give a fuck about you. It's like you have maybe your parents that love you unconditionally, but as a man, that even with that, your mom and dad, might not even love you unconditionally. I don't know if I've experienced like unconditional, maybe from my grandma and my mom. I don't know, but like, could I get away with like being a serial killer and my mom would still put money on my books? Probably not. But like, yeah, so the big thing is, when the shit test happens, and it can be an employee says something fucking disrespectful, or it's like you say, hey, I need you to go to this thing and do this job, and they give you an attitude like, I don't want to do that one. It's like, I didn't ask you what I wanted you to do. It's like, it's like, and again, the shit test, if you don't check it right back, it's like, well, I'm paying you to do this shit. It's like, if I wanted to do it myself, I would do it myself. I don't have time to do it, so that's why I'm paying you to go do it. And if you don't want to go do it, then what are you doing? What are we doing together then? Because there's, again, a power dynamic when it comes to employer relationship, because you fire these people. It's like, well, if you don't want to do it, then fuck you then. Bye. It's like, but again, these are things that you start to develop as you start to expand your own, state of consciousness. So it's like, if you like, see somebody maybe at a different level, where it's like, man, their marriage is really on point, like, the husband seems to really love the wife seems to be respectful and loving her husband, it's like, you can look at that as a demonstration of, that state of consciousness being expressed, have a vision of like, that's where I want to be too, maybe even, and then you start to customize it a little bit. But that's not going to happen if you're stuck in a state of consciousness that has a correspondence of disrespect, and that has to do with you changing yourself. It's like, you can't change your wife, you can't change your employees, you can't change the people around you, you can't change the situation that you might find yourself in, but you can change how you are interpreting it, how your assumptions are playing out in relationship to that, how your boundaries are either being checked. When I was in jail, I mean, you get shit tested by people in there too. It's like, And sometimes that can be intense. I told I was in a small pod. The block I was on when I was in there, longest stretch I did was 90 days, but I only did 45 of them. In jail. The rest was good time or whatever. But like a month and a half is long enough for me. But it was like, I was in this like this pod or whatever, and there was like maybe 10 cells or something like that, and they had bunk beds in each one and like cot on the floor. And so there wasn't a ton of people in this area. But like one of the guys that was like seemed to like hold a position of power in the pod. It seemed like to like run shit or whatever. Asked me if, hey, you want to join our little gang or whatever. And it's like, no fucking way. What is that? What would that do for me? If I join your little gang. It's like there's only 20 of us in here. 18 of you are supposedly in this gang or whatever. It's like basically you just want me to let you tell me what to do. Yeah, and people in kind of a predatory mode can be kind of manipulative too. The same guy tried to trick me into don't take anything from anybody in jail. Don't take presents. Don't fucking take anything. That's just advice if you find yourself locked up. Don't fucking take anything. This guy gave me it's like what did he make it out of? Can't remember what he made this bracelet out of, but maybe like bed sheets or something, and he like braided it and took like Skittles or like M&Ms or something, and like took the dye off it and like colored the bracelet, and he's like, here, here's one for you can send home to your family or whatever, and he gave it to me. I didn't even ask for it or want it. And I'm like, dude, I don't want this shit. It's like, and I tried giving it back to him, and then he tried like, oh, you owe me money now. It's like, fuck you if I do. It's like, I didn't want this. You just gave it to me. I'm giving it back to you. You can give it to somebody else. Again, you get these shit tests, and some of them you might be really good at. Like if a guy shit tests you, for example, you might be very adequately prepared to handle that situation. Whereas like maybe a woman shit tests you, and you're just like you're really weak because maybe you just like have a lot of love for your mom or something like that, and you can't imagine that any woman can be just like cruel and like manipulative towards you. Because like your frame of reference comes from a really loving mother or fucking grandma or something. And so it's like you might have some bias or some programming that's not in correspondence or whatever. But the thing to start to do is, as you're getting these different shit tests, go within yourself and see if there's a pattern to them. If there's something that's habitually playing out, it's like, oh, every woman I'm ever with has the same fucking archetypal fucking drama. Why is that? Why is that happening? Oh, every man I ever get with, he's a narcissist, or every man I ever get with, he's just self-absorbed or chaotic, or whatever it happens to be. It's like, look at these patterns, because in those patterns you might start to discover some of your fucking programming and assumptions that are just being externalized into the screen of space and into the relationships that you have. But as you discover those, then you can change your state of consciousness, start respecting yourself more, start to not tolerate sin in those assumptions in your own self, and start to put on what God says about you instead. And as you do that, then there's a natural correspondence that starts to happen in your life. It's almost like when you have a headache and then the headache goes away. It's like you'll have this state of consciousness that kind of sucks. You're getting shit tested all the time. You say, okay, well, this is putting me on a direction to go over here. It's like, okay, well, then as you start doing that, it's almost like you get led through this bridge of incidents so naturally and normally that you get led to the other side, and it's not till you're already over there that you go, hey, wait a minute, something's different. It's like with your headache, it's like, oh, I stopped paying attention to it, and I don't know exactly when it left, but now I find myself like 15 minutes later, like occupied with some like, activity or whatever, and my headache's gone. Yeah, it's the same type of thing. And so, yeah, I just wanted to bring that to you guys' attention. I know there's a lot of people getting shit tests out there, and yeah, and like, and it brings them down, and it makes them like, why is everything fighting against me? Why does everything have so much fucking resistance and so much drama? Um, yeah, a lot of it has to do with things pushing your boundaries, and then not um, then you aren't then enforcing any type of boundary. So it's like you remove your attention and time from whatever's bothering, whatever's pushing the boundary, whatever's shit testing you, person, place, event. Remove your attention, remove your time that you're around that person, situation, whatever, and make it clear that you're not going to tolerate that shit. It's like, yeah, if that's something that you struggle with, maybe a little bit more slack. If you know that person's got a lot of programming that's like they're working through it, but they're trying, that's one thing versus just being completely unconscious and oblivious to everything but their own selfish shit going on within them. It's another thing, but it's something we're all kind of working on. So, with that being said, I think I'm about. So, I appreciate you guys liking, sharing, subscribing, all the social networking things. I appreciate your spiritual support and your physical support. Thank you for that. I do appreciate it. And until the next now, God bless.